Hello, what's up? We are back for another episode of Onside Chicks. I am Jordan Rard Coupe.
And I am Kaylee Chakosky.
And we've officially made it through technically 2 weeks of preseason, heading into week 3. So there was a lot more uncertainties answered now. We have a lot more sense of what we're looking at, especially with all the rookies. But today we're not really focusing on them as much. Today we're looking on some of the bounce back players, guys that were a little either injured or shaky last season and how they could bounce back for this upcoming 2021 season. So who do you mainly have your eye on going into this?
I've got 2 New York Giants, and I think I feel like I'm going to talk a lot about them today just because we're also going to dive into coaching staff that are on the hot seat, and they're obviously there.
Definitely.
Over the past day. So the first one I have, Evan Ingram. I really love this guy. I always have. And so I think the struggles that we've seen from him, especially last season, are a little to do with obviously just them having a really terrible offensive line. Their running back, being taken out week 2. So your run game goes out the window. You are shifting priorities on offense right off the bat of the season. But you did see Daniel Jones connect with Evan Ingram on some deep balls that looked really good. And that's where Daniel Jones shines, right? He shines on those deep ball situations, especially not having a good offensive line, not being able to run the ball the way you want to. So I would like to see more of that from Evan Ingram this season. I would also really be interested to see him kind of flex both into that short yardage underneath situation and into that deep ball, because you've added Kenny Golladay, you can pull that coverage down the field. Then you've also got Kyle Rudolph, so he can serve as that underneath guy. So it's really a perfect situation for Evan Ingram to bounce back and really be super flexible on their offense, which is really exciting because I think when you try to pigeonhole him a little too much into scheme, he is a person that really struggles. I mean, we've seen him drop balls. We've seen him just not really be able to get open. So I think adding these offensive weapons are really going to serve him. But I love him. I think he's capable of so much more than we've seen.
I know one of my very good friends, Sam Cardona, she hosts the Girl Who Talks Sports podcast, and she is a diehard Giants fan, and she is just so done with Evan Ingram. So I feel like and I know a lot of Giants fans are in that same boat. And I do understand it, especially as an Eagles fan. You see guys that should live up to their potential and just don't. So with everything that you said, with all the pieces that they added, I feel like if he can't bounce back this season, there's no coming back, at least not in New York as a Giant. I think he'll be out the door.
I agree with you. And I think that about a lot of their team, coaches, players. I think this is a really pivotal year for them as a whole. And so I think, the fire's there, right? And we heard from their owner recently. We'll talk more about it later, but it's a make or break season for the New York Giants. And Evan Ingram is kind of the leader of the pack there. The other guy I had on this list was Saquon Barkley, which I think is just poised for a comeback and is really on the top of people's list for this kind of bounce back player type of guy. And I think even him though, you've got to justify that draft pick, and you really have to justify why you're spending the time, the money, and really building an offense around this guy, especially losing him so early in the season last year and then looking so lost, right? In a division that was easily winnable. So I am really interested to see what they do. But I think if this season does not go well for them, what we see over the next year, 2, 3 years with the New York Giants is going to look completely different. I mean, I probably see a complete 180 if this season doesn't play out the way that they want it to. But then again, you're in the NFC East, so
anything is possible in the NFC East.
Right.
Another big Giant, and it's not even, you really can't refer to it as a bounce back because we haven't really seen the potential yet. But I think the biggest question mark overall on this entire team is Danny Dimes.
Yeah.
Is he capable of bringing this team in the right direction? Can he get this team to the playoffs? Can he get them to the Super Bowl? And from what we've seen so far, I don't get that feeling, but at the same time, he's young. He's gone through a little bit of a coaching rotation. So, and like we'll get into later in the show, that coaching situation, especially with all of the recent retirings and everything that's going on there, very weird. There's a lot happening there. So I think there is a lot to consider regarding him, but his role affects Evan Ingram. His role affects Saquon Barkley. So there's just so many big question marks in New York. Another one who's no longer in New York, now he was a Jet, Sam Darnold now in Carolina.
Yeah.
This is his time to prove himself, to make a name for himself on a new team, because we saw bits and pieces of the potential that he has, and we saw it in New York. Granted, with Adam Gase as your head coach, it's hard to accomplish next to anything. Right. Then with a wonky team around you, it's really hard to come out there and prove yourself, kind of like what Trevor Lawrence is walking into right now with Jacksonville. It kind of reminds me a lot of Sam Darnold, and I don't want him to get stuck in that trap, but I'm hoping that Sam Darnold, it's not the perfect situation for him to walk into, but it's leaps and bounds better than being a New York Jet. So I really want him to come out this season and kind of show everybody that it wasn't his fault that the Jets looked the way they did. And hopefully he can start reinventing his name a little bit.
I like that one. I think we've talked about this. I think we're both fans of a comeback for Sam Darnold and just rooting for him in general. But I think, look, you look at what he's been doing and the situation he was in with the Jets, there's not much you can expect for his stock on the trade market. And so landing with the Panthers, I think, is really good for him in the sense of that coaching staff being willing to work with players like that, really having a fresh perspective on what they want that offense to look like and what they want that team to look like, the locker room to look like. And I think it is a team that's building, right? There's young guys there. There is momentum building. They are a team that are building the right way. They're doing things in pieces. They're not trying to rush or rebuild. They're not walking into the season with playoff Super Bowl expectations. I think obviously in the locker room, it's Super Bowl or bust for every team. I think that's just how you have to look at it, to go out every single week and play your best. But I think he's in a good situation, right? You're not going to walk into the starting spot in a lot of places where you have a playoff ready team and Super Bowl ready team after those kind of performances that Sam Darnold's had. But if you get to walk into a team that has some potential, I mean, you're getting Christian McCaffrey, you're getting these pieces that have so much potential. You've got guys that you have a connection with on the offense. And I think I have high hopes for him. I know some people
I do too.
It's mixed reviews, and it's either like you really are excited to watch him and you think he's going to come back, or you like absolutely hate him and think he's
there is no in between with him, like at all.
I know, poor guy. Another one I had, Joe Mixon. A lot of stories about him recently. I think it's interesting because a lot of the stories I've heard have been locker room stories, like him really stepping up and being a leader alongside Joe Burrow, which I really do like because I think he is that guy on that team. And the exit of Giovanni Bernard really sets him up to become that go-to third down back. It really is what the Bengals are looking for in that number one guy, and gives him the chance to step up in his role, the chance to really play a more versatile role in their offense. And I mean, we literally, the only question is, can he stay healthy? Right. And I think that's the concern. And we saw him branch out. We saw him block like Ndamukong Suh when they played the Bucs, and that was really fun to watch. But it provides a lot of reassurance for Joe Burrow, because now you've got a guy that can step up both in the blocking game and in the run game. And honestly, in the pass catching game, if you want to put him out there, I think he's capable. So I think it's bound to happen. Right. And I think Giovanni Bernard leaving is just one of those things that really sets him up and propels him a little bit more, and maybe he'll get there a little bit faster. But you've added some offensive talent, so now you've got guys that can pull that coverage downfield. You have, people that can free up this pressure that kind of has been on him and has felt really looming on that team, especially when Joe Burrow went down. So I think he's kind of primed to step into his role, but I also think he's a guy much like Danny Jones, much like everyone on the New York Giants, for pretty much Evan Ingram, everyone. He's a guy that if you don't step up this year, it's going to be tough, right?
Yeah.
It's a tough road after that, and so maybe not as, I guess, doomed as Daniel Jones, but definitely a tough road to come back from, especially as this team looks to make significant strides in the future based on their draft choices. So I don't know. You got any other ones or honorable mentions?
Yes, there's a couple. Well, one, do we want to talk about Jamal Adams?
Yeah. Okay. He was an honorable mention for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So he just got his contract extension in Seattle. I have very weird feelings about this. He came into Seattle. I was super excited for him to go there. They desperately needed him.
Mm-hmm.
They paid him. They gave him everything he wanted, even though I didn't really feel like he stepped up to the plate last season in a way that he should have, in a way I was expecting. There were a lot of moments where I was like, you're Jamal Adams, like you should be doing so much more. I remember there were a couple highlights last year where you literally see him just like missing people and letting things go. And I was like, how do you let this happen? Especially in Seattle. Seattle could easily be Super Bowl contenders if they figure out a few missing pieces. Like they are right there. So, and we've talked about them extensively. So the fact that they gave him the big extension, I think that kind of spoke to me. And it was like, now you actually have to step up. You have to prove why you're there, because last year I didn't feel it. It wasn't 100% and they paid him anyway. They wanted him to stay anyway. He had 9.5 sacks, like on paper, great, but it just wasn't that explosive energy that I think he should have been. So I have very mixed feelings about it. And I really need him to come out this year and just be unstoppable every single play, because you need to make up for last year and you need to show why you earned the contract extension.
I agree. Especially because we kind of figured out that the Seahawks defense was so fraudulent pretty early on. Like even when they were winning games, it was so close and they won so many close games, which is admirable, I guess. But a lot of it was lack of defense and really lack of defensive.
It didn't have to be that way.
It didn't have to be that way. And it hurt them throughout the season, later in the season, in the playoffs, obviously. Just being really taken out of the question based on your defense, right? And I think, and that was the tough part, is I guess kind of expecting him to stand out amongst a really bad defense and make the plays that no one else on that side of the ball is making. But I can't tell how much of it is just overall like the defense being flat, right? Because I think that's part of it too. Like you said, on paper, he wasn't bad, but on film and on tape and week in and week out watching games, it is like,
where are you?
Yeah. And so I'm interested. I was not that impressed with anything they did defensively last week. And so I'm pretty interested to see if that improves over preseason and then going into the regular season, because I think at this point, it probably is like hey, we're paying you. We know what you're capable of. Now you have to step up, and here's the extension, but here's the contingencies on which we're going to offer you this. And do you think you can step up and be the leader on defense? And if that's the case, and he does step up and do that, which I think is completely possible, then great. And I want it more than anybody, because I think just having Adam Gase say that he's irrelevant is enough for me to root for anybody. Like if Adam Gase says anyone's irrelevant, I'm automatically the biggest fan of that person, because Adam Gase is literally irrelevant. So it's like, it's one of those things where I'm like, I want nothing but the best for Jamal Adams. So I'm interested. I think the Seahawks defense is going to be their downfall again this year. And that's really tough because they had a rocky offseason. I don't know how their offense is really going to come out looking, especially because we ended last year with Pete Carroll saying we need to throw the ball less. And that
them having no idea where their actual problems were.
Right. So I don't know. They could be a mess this year. They could be a mess.
I said, and I don't think they've ever come in last in their division. I'm pretty sure, because I tweeted out, I was like, I have a feeling Seahawks come in last.
Well, when you think of the rest of the division, it's like, who else would come in last?
Exactly. Because the 49ers, as long as they can stay healthy, they have one decent quarterback and one great quarterback. My opinion, Trey Lance is the great one, but that's up for debate. And then you have the Cardinals, who are moving in an incredible direction incredibly quickly. And then you have the Rams, who just got Matthew Stafford.
Yeah.
So, like, when you look at Seattle compared to these three other teams, they feel the weakest to me right now.
Yeah, they feel the weakest. And I think the Rams will take figuring out, but their defense is incredible, right?
Exactly.
Like, they've got playmakers, and they've got playmakers that are making the money and making the plays. And so I think it's just one of those things where you know that you have things on lock if you're the Rams.
Exactly.
And maybe you figure out the quarterback situation. Maybe you play a game that's, a little more tailored to playing it safe. You have a smaller playbook, whatever. But I don't see that happening because Matthew Stafford, we know, is probably physically capable. And we've seen Sean McVay scheme things for quarterbacks, backup quarterbacks. I mean, we watched him do it for Sean Wolford when Jared Goff went down, right? And so that was the thing, is he's incredibly impressive scheming for quarterbacks, specifically to their strengths. So I don't see any way the Seahawks aren't in last in this division. And I'm sure this clip will probably come up and be wrong because that's just life. But it is just one of those things where it's like every other team in this division, it's already incredibly hard to play in this division. But when every other team is making such significant strides in offseason and adding impressive names to their roster and just really growing in the ways that they need to and filling holes, and you're the only team that's really not doing that, it is tough to see your path to really anything, the playoffs or just in general success on the field week in and week out. So,
when you're like arguing with someone and you have an issue with someone and you're like trying to show them like, this is what I have a problem with. And they're like, yes, I understand. I am doing this. And it's the complete opposite of what you're saying. That's literally the Seattle Seahawks right now. It's like, we know we have issues, but we don't know exactly what they are. And if that's the case, you're not going to be able to improve at all. Like, you're going to be at a standstill. So it's super frustrating. I hope they can figure it out, because at the end of the day, I respect Pete Carroll. I want the best for Russell Wilson. Like, I like this team. It's frustrating to watch them make mistakes and to know kind of that it's not really going to move in the right direction.
Yeah.
I have one more honorable mention in this category. Odell Beckham Jr.
I thought it would be cheesy to make him my first one, but I want him to be my first one because I want nothing more than this.
I want to see him like be absolutely on fire from the moment the season starts to the moment the season ends, especially because there was trade talk with him. Like there's a lot of big question marks. I know he's got a big injury history now. Is it close to retirement? Do you pack it up if you can't get it together this season? Like, there is so much that could happen. Or like him and Jarvis Landry in Cleveland are incredible if they can figure it out, because they both have such a specific role. And at the same time, you need both of them. So I would really love for him stay healthy, come out. We know how explosive he can be. And he's not someone that you rely on every single play, week after week. But he is there to make the impressive catches, the impressive runs that change the momentum and win games. Yep. And I had issues with him back in the day when he was like way too cocky and rude. Now he's like, it's more of like a confident, like, I know how good I am, but it's a lot more toned down. And I respect the hell out of him. And I want him to come out and be great this season.
Yeah, he's more just like minding his own business while being in it, which I appreciate. Although I love everything about him. And I do think you're right. He's not going to be everything. And I think Jarvis Landry has really taken that kind of go-to spot and role for Baker Mayfield. I think we've seen him really just look like that number one guy and look like the guy that has that connection with your quarterback. And so I think once Odell, we saw that happen, right? We saw him transition to, I don't need to be the guy on every down. I don't need to be the every snap guy that you're looking for. But as long as I'm the guy on the right moments, that's what matters. And he really, I think, embraced that. And it's unfortunate because I think when you factor in injuries, things like that, it's really hard to know like how those things play out. But I do think he is starting to embrace that as he goes on in his career. So again, per staying healthy, if that can happen for any of these guys, then I think we're looking at a whole different season for him. I do think that they are going to have just a more balanced offense. I think they're really settling into what their game is. And I think we saw that at the end of last season. And last season was just so weird for everybody, but we really saw them take ownership of who they are on both sides of the ball, which I really enjoyed. And this would be his first, like if he plays all season, this would be his real first season under Kevin Stefanski. I think Baker Mayfield's been able to settle into that. Jarvis Landry has, but he really hasn't, just due to injury and being out and all of those things. So I'm excited for him. I would like to see it. I think Cleveland, they're just that team that like you see it, like you see the potential, you see everything, and they're just like, it's just like a game of turning knobs until you get the right combination, and they just keep kind of turning the wrong ones. But the answer is in there, right? Like the answer to the riddle is on that team and that roster. It's just, can you put it all together and make it work and execute it? And they remind me a lot of the Bills in a way, except the Bills, I think, they're unsolving the riddle a little faster. So I do think this season's going to be better for them as a whole, but I love him. I just love everything about him. So I'm excited to see what he does. I think he's primed for it. And I think he's another guy. Again, if you don't have it, it is going to be hard to retain that type of status in the league. Like it's going to be tough if you go to get traded at some point or you're looking for an extension. Like I think if you continue to regress or you don't at least progress, you are really going to be in a tough spot if you're Odell Beckham Jr.
I agree 100%. All right, let's take a different turn. So now we have bounce back players. We've gone through a whole bunch of them, guys that could potentially be on the hot seat if they can't bounce back. Now we have some coaching staffs that are already on the hot seat. They're on their last leg. Who do you think takes the cake on this? Who has the most to prove this season to save their job?
I think so. Okay. I think before yesterday, I would have said the Bears.
Before yesterday.
Okay. But now I think the Giants are just so much more under pressure because you have owner John Mara coming out saying everyone's on the hot seat. Like that is a quote, right? Mm-hmm. That's a little tough to swallow week one of preseason. I think that's not really conducive. Say it in private to your coaches, to your front office, and then have that message translated down. I don't know that that's something that needs to be said publicly. I think that puts a lot of pressure on players.
Yeah, I feel like that just causes drama.
I hate it. I don't like that move, but.
And I get kind of what he's trying to like whip them into shape, but I think that's a very toxic way of doing it. And that it can just cause more issues than it fixes.
Right. And you think about it and it's like, I don't know. It's tough because I do think that part of the quote was speaking on behalf of the fans, saying like the fans have us on the hot seat because they want a winning football team. And when you look at, I'm going to say this as a fan of a team that has just been historically bad. And I think you could also speak to this before 2017 of like being a fan of a team that hadn't won a Super Bowl, right? Like they have 4, okay? Like they have 4 and not too long ago, they were in the playoffs, and not that long ago in the grand scheme of the NFL were they in the Super Bowl, right? So there are those things where it's like, okay, like, come on, right? Yeah. Like you're not historically bad. You just had a rough patch of rebuilding. But you have things to be excited about. You've added players. You've added good players. And so I think it was
You're holding Allen Robinson hostage.
I mean, let's not even go there. But yeah, so John Mara comes out, says that. Dave Gettleman is like, oh yeah, playoff contender team. Now, in the NFC East, maybe. I'm not mad about it. Like, you probably could. But then Mara said he wants to walk off the field the last game of the season feeling like the team is capable of winning a Super Bowl. And that seems like a stretch.
It is.
And he said he's not going to make a playoff mandate, and he's all in on Joe Judge. And I like Joe Judge. I think he's a great players coach. I think he's brought that locker room to a really good place. But now you've got a ton of pressure on Daniel Jones, who, like we said, is in a make or break season already. Saquon Barkley, who's coming off a super gruesome injury that took him out for the entire season. And you've put pressure on a coach that you turn around and speak like you're all in on him, right? Like 100% Joe Judge. And then you turn around and you say, but if we don't go to the playoffs, essentially everyone's fired. They're on the hot seat, right? So it's so strange. But I think he's the owner most poised to make that decision quickly. So I think if things start to go downhill for the Giants mid-season, I think that could be the first staff to really see cuts while the season's still happening.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely fair. And I also think too, just because, like we said earlier in the show, you have a bunch of guys that could be very good. And if you can get a coach in there that can find the best in all of them and make it all work, granted, like it's very hard. There might be a cut here and there, players wise, just to make things work and make all the puzzle pieces fit. But at the end of the day, you could have a great team sooner rather than later. And I just don't think they're willing to wait. They sound very impatient, which I understand to an extent. But yeah, no, it just feels very, very toxic right now. And I honestly can't see it working out at all.
Yeah, I agree. Who's on your list?
So I have Mike Zimmer for the Vikings.
Okay. This is a good one that I
Yes.
debated a lot, and totally understandable.
Yes. Just because when you look at the actual roster, you give Kirk Cousins his extension. When you look at what they actually have, this should not be a bad team at all. Now, granted, you're in a division with the Packers. It's tough to come in and take that division year after year. Like you're always going to be in that competition with them as long as Aaron Rodgers is still there, which, as we know now, he will be. But to be 7-9 last season, there was absolutely no need. Their defense was legitimately terrible, like god awful. And this is a guy who can put together a good defense. And so there's a lot of big question marks. His overall record here is 64, 47, and 1. So he has a decent record. You have a decent roster. You know how to put together a decent defense. Why everything isn't working, it really makes no sense to me. And after the Stephon Diggs loss, losing a couple other big pieces now as well, I just think if he can't have a winning record this season, I don't think he's one of the coaches that would get fired halfway through. But I think if he, just because of how much he's proved for them already, like they've had playoff runs, they haven't been consecutive, they haven't been consistent. So it's just a little uneasy. If he doesn't come out this season and have a winning record, I think he's done and they move on.
I could agree, and I agree 100%. It's not coming mid-season. I just, like you said, on paper, it looks right.
Yeah.
But when you're watching it, it just doesn't pass the eye test. And I think there's a ceiling on a lot of these coaches where it's like, okay, like we're doing okay. We're not a bad football team over the past however many seasons, but are we good enough to get past these other teams, right? And if you're never going to be good enough, then you can't hold on to those staffs.
Exactly.
And I think you said consistent. The consistency is the number one problem there. You'll see them one week and they look like a team that could go to the Super Bowl. And then the next week, none of those pieces are in place, right? It's like they don't know how to consistently get the ball to their weapons. They don't know how to consistently play on defense. I mean, I don't think we ever saw a really outstanding defensive performance from them, but they had games that were decent on defense, I would say. And I think on both sides of the wall, it's just they look like a different team from week to week. And if they looked like the same team and they got a little bit better every week and they're in a tough division and they just don't make the playoffs, that's a whole different story, right?
Exactly.
But I don't think that they understand when they have success, what made them have success and how to replicate that again the following week. So that's what makes me nervous.
When we played them in the NFC Championship game the year the Eagles went to the Super Bowl. And it literally, looking back now, an Eagles-Vikings NFC Championship game feels so weird. But just like you said, it's like I don't want to say they get lucky because they do have a components to be a great team,
Mhm.
but it's like they get lucky in the way they utilize it, and then, as you said, don't know how to execute it again. And
Right.
it's like you have to figure out a scheme that works week after week because we know you guys are good. We
Right.
know you have good pieces. Like this should be working week after week. It's not just like, wow, we figured it out for this one stretch and now we're good. It's like you need to build your team to constantly be a contender. And if you can't do that, there's no reason. There's a coach that will be able to do that for this team. This isn't a broken team.
No.
This is a team that's very close, that needs a couple pieces. Might need someone that can come in and work on this defense a little bit because I think that would make them next level. But at the end of the day, they're a solid team and they're not a 7-9 team.
No.
There's no reason this team should not have a winning record.
They win games, and it's funny because when you look at the talent of like Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, like you look at those guys and you're like, yeah, I mean, I'd hope that they'd make a play, right?
Exactly.
They're so talented. Eventually they're going to make plays. And that it feels like they fall into those moments of like talent just outworks the scheme, right?
Mhm.
And it never feels like those plays or those moments were planned. They always feel like those guys are just so talented, they made the play happen.
They
And
make
so
it work.
and that's great, but imagine what those people could do in a situation, in a scheme that really played to their strengths, really just was overall suited for that roster, which I feel like it's just so disjointed. So I agree. I see that as like maybe an after the season kind of thing, but who knows? I mean, maybe it all clicks. I can't imagine it just based on what we've seen in the offseason from them. But yeah, that is one to keep an eye on for sure. I also had the Cowboys, which this situation
Yes.
makes me so freaking angry. I don't get the Mike McCarthy hire still. Like it boggles me because what they said they wanted to achieve, right? By firing Jason Garrett is not what is
You
not
can't get that by hiring Mike McCarthy.
right. And it doesn't make sense. It's like 2 + 2 = 18. And it's like, how did you get that? Like, no hate to Mike McCarthy. It's just a mismatch of scheme. Like it's what they want is not what he does. And I laugh because I was going back when I was prepping for the show and just remembering the time when he came in as the coach. And one thing is that they wanted to get him out of the old school thinking, using analytics, really playing to like the new next gen football type of coaching and what offenses look like now in the NFL. And he's like, yeah, I analyzed every snap, and then gets in a presser and is like, I lied. And it's like, I'm just not seeing how this is a good hire on any level for anybody. I think they were just really impatient to get someone in there. And I think that's who they ended up with. But I think, look, Dan Quinn obviously suits their defense a lot better than Mike McCarthy's BFF that was in there before. So it's nice to have somebody who actually knows what they're doing. And this might be the easiest. The dogs are losing their mind. This might be the easiest situation to fire somebody, especially midseason, because if you get to the point where you don't really have Dak Prescott, if he's not healthy, which we're still up in the air about,
Yeah.
obviously, or if things just aren't going your way down the line, I'm not seeing a reason to keep Mike McCarthy on payroll. I'm just not, because you look at your OC and you've got Kellen Moore, who you obviously love because you threw money at him to stay and work under Mike McCarthy when he could have gone back to college and just coached there.
Yeah.
And you've got Dan Quinn as your DC, right? So you've got two guys that could easily filter up to that spot. They're more qualified interim head coaches than most of the guys serving as interim head coaches or who would serve as interim head coaches. So I just feel like this is the hot seat is so hot for Mike McCarthy. And I think maybe not publicly, but if this season starts to go downhill, especially if they have a healthy Dak Prescott, I'm thinking this comes sooner rather than later, only because they're so well equipped with their other coaching staff.
No, I agree with you 100%. If this roster is healthy, there is absolutely no reason why they do not come in and take the NFC East. There's absolutely no, they made, and like, I hate even talking this highly about the Cowboys, but they did everything that they had to do this offseason to work on that defense. They finally paid Dak. Now there is a big question mark because of the injury, but at the end of the day, if all of these pieces start working together and you're still consistently not even working together, if they all come out and execute the way that they should and you're still losing games, it's coaching. It is literally, there's no way around it at that point because you have your offense is all stars, your defense moving in the right direction. You started picking up all the pieces that you needed to get there. The Cowboys should be Super Bowl contenders, and all NFL media, they get so hype about them every season because you look at the roster, you look at how stacked they are. There's honestly no reason for them not to be. And I'm literally like cringing on the inside right now. But like from unbiased, like Cowboys should be Super Bowl contenders. And I just know they're not going to be because I know the way Jerry Jones handles this team. And I don't trust Mike McCarthy to get it done. So if at the end of the day, I think the only chance he has at keeping his job, and I don't even think he should, but knowing Jerry Jones, you never know what's going to happen. If Dak isn't healthy and we don't get a real look for how this team actually is playing, I think Mike McCarthy might get one more shot, but I don't even think he deserves that. Like, I really think it's in their best interest to go out and get somebody else. And trust me, I don't mind if they keep Mike McCarthy until the end of frickin' time because I don't think he's getting them anywhere. But there is somebody that can make this team unstoppable. And it's concerning that they're not going for it.
Yeah, especially like, and I think Jerry Jones is just that guy, right? Like, he's not the guy to turn around and like drop somebody he's just not that guy, right? Like, he lets those situations linger longer than they should, and you miss out on prime opportunities. You miss out on the right timing, which I think is so important in the NFL, especially in that division, right? Because last year was just so attainable, and I get it, like injuries happen, things happen, but to have a situation that's that attainable, you know what Washington's going through, right? Like, you know what New York's going through. You know what Philly's going through. Like, you kind of got a sense that that division was going to be rough from the get. And if that's the guy that you're like, got it, we're going with this guy, it's like, it makes me really question your decision-making skills because I just, knowing that's your one shot, you just want to equip, and who's not going to come work there, right? Like,
exactly.
It's like, with the roster you have, the reputation of being the Dallas Cowboys, like, who's not going to go work there and take that job? Like, come on. Everyone wanted that job.
Yes. And you chose Mike McCarthy. And it's so ironic from Jerry Jones, who's someone that all he wants to do is win. Every year he comes out, this team is Super Bowl contenders. I will do whatever I have to do. But he doesn't do whatever he has to do. Like, he like manipulates it and makes weird moves and weird decisions. And sometimes he does the right thing, but most of the time he doesn't. And it literally, I mean, I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful that they're
no one's complaining.
No one's complaining that the Cowboys can't get it together. But at the end of the day, like, you should. Like, there's no reason for you not to.
Right. I want better for their players because they have some gems.
Yeah, whatever. Another one that I kind of hinted at earlier, and this one sucks because I like him, Matt Nagy on the Bears.
Yeah.
And I think it all comes down to the way he handles Justin Fields.
Yep.
And it's literally, if he goes about it correctly, I think he keeps his job. If he starts Andy Dalton for 1 week this could be a midseason fire. Yeah. If he doesn't make the right decisions regarding this, because like I said, you're dropping F-bombs in the middle. See, where you're holding out. I don't even know where that came from. I literally was
okay. I think it's just one. I think we have to have like 3 before we have to make it explicit. So I think we're
perfect. You're holding Allen Robinson hostage. You drafted, you moved up in the draft to go and get Justin Fields. You could start turning this team around right now, and yet you still have Andy Dalton listed as your QB1. And Matt Nagy, like, people referred to him before as a quarterback guru.
Yeah.
And now you're in like this mess. Like, you have the opportunity to like rebuild your name, rebuild the Chicago Bears organization, take Justin Fields, run with it. So if he handles this correctly, he's safe. If he doesn't, he's screwed, and there's no in
Right.
between.
Right. It all comes down to the quarterback situation because, like you said, like he's just been touted as this guy who just is a magic worker with quarterbacks, and it's like, where?
I mean, Mitch Trubisky is now a backup in Buffalo.
Right, right. And so it's just one of those things where it's like your franchise needs wins, your jobs need to be saved.
Yeah.
And why are you so like unwaveringly committed to Andy Dalton? And that's just what I don't get is like,
no, it makes zero sense to me.
Zero. And I get it. Like it was a rough year last year. And I understand that. And I get that you want to go in and you wanted to give certainty to your team. But now you have Justin Fields.
Yeah. And we saw in one preseason game, we saw what he could do.
Right.
Like you see the potential that's there. And if you're this quarterback guru, then you take him, you mold him, and you make him a star. Like that. Yeah. It's as simple as that.
Yeah. And I look, if you can't have success with Justin Fields, I don't really know what to tell you.
Yeah.
Then you don't deserve to have your job. And I think the only way that his job is safe is maybe like he gets the green light to start Andy Dalton. And Andy Dalton doesn't do that terrible. And then we see the expected decline of Andy Dalton. Yep. And then maybe Justin Fields comes in maybe like week 4, 5, 6. And then he progresses throughout the season. Then maybe we see a situation where he keeps his job. Any other scenario, I cannot imagine that happening because I just think that one, the decision alone, if he's the one responsible for making it, and they have put him out on the line as the person responsible for making this decision, like that's been said. So if you are responsible for making that single-handedly and you're still choosing to put Andy Dalton in, then I already question your ability to be a head coach. Now, if you are getting pushed by someone else to start Andy Dalton, which as we know can be the case, we don't know, we're not in the front office, but if that's the case, and you can pivot to Justin Fields midseason and have success with it, that's the only way I see it working.
Yeah.
That's the only way.
Yeah. If the decision is entirely on his shoulders and it's week 8 and the Bears have a terrible record and Andy Dalton is still your starter, done. There's I will personally fire him because it's literally ridiculous.
It's like citizen's arrest, but fan firing.
Yeah, literally. All right. Well, now, so we have another week of preseason coming up. There are a couple, honestly, cool matchups that I'm excited for.
Yeah. I wonder if we have any of the same ones. You can start.
Okay. I'm biased here. I always love, and like it's preseason, there isn't that much on the line. We're not seeing all the major names, but every time the Eagles play the Patriots for me, it's just fun. It's exciting after everything that happened. So I am excited. I want to see more of Jalen Hurts because we saw him. What we saw was decent. I was happy with it. I thought he did I'm not going to say great. He did good. Yeah. I liked what I saw him working on. He worked on getting the ball up the middle more, which is something that he had a lot of struggles with last season. So I like the direction we're moving. I want to see more of that, especially up against Patriots defense. Again, it's not going to be all starters, but just to get more of a feel for how we're looking. And I really just want to keep seeing on the other side of the ball, I really want to keep seeing this Patriots team after all of the spending that they did. I want to see more of Mac Jones. I want to see what direction they're going in. So that is a matchup I'm very excited for. Super biased, but it's valid in this case.
I can agree with that. I have one, we just got off of the Bears. I'm going back to the Bears. I think the Bills and the Bears is going to be pretty interesting because these teams are in such different situations when it comes to preseason and how they're approaching it. And the score is really irrelevant at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The Bears are expected to start their starters a bit more, or I guess play their starters a bit more this week. And I think that makes sense because you have a lot more to work out. You have kinks to work out. You have a lot more pieces to put in place offensively, specifically heading into the season. On defense, you're okay. I think if you're Chicago, but you definitely need to see more of your offensive starters. Andy Dalton played 2 series, 7 snaps. we're going to see him more. And the reason I am excited about this is because we're going to get a better look and a more, I guess, contextual look at Andy Dalton versus Justin Fields. And it's going to put this quarterback situation into perspective, right? It's not going to be like, oh, well, we called Andy Dalton, 7 safe snaps or whatever they want to say to justify how he played, to justify the outcome, pulling him out, all of those things. Now, hopefully, we're going to see him a little bit more, followed immediately by Justin Fields, who we'll see probably less of, but still a lot of. And I think it'll make it a lot harder for them to justify starting Andy Dalton. I'm really interested to see what the post-game press conference looks like if this game goes a lot like the last game. And then obviously like Mitch Trubisky returning to Chicago and Soldier Field is going to be fun. I think that's just a fun twist because he's like public enemy number 1. So, fans, like, as long as they don't throw anything at him, I think it'll just be fun to see like how that reaction is. But I expect obviously the Bills to just really tune up their defense. I think it'll be fun to see how both Chicago quarterbacks react to that, because I think that's where the Bills really need to focus on. We saw them kind of give up a few games defensively last year. So I think they're really going to be tuning up those defensive starters and seeing how the Bears react to that on offense, specifically Justin Fields. I think will be a lot of fun, and how a team plans for Justin Fields on tape, because this is now you have a week of him on tape. Again, it's preseason, so they're not 100% scheming just for their matchup, but also they are going to have a plan in place. They know what to expect from him now on the NFL level. So I'm pretty excited to see that. I think there's a lot of storylines there, but I think contextually around this quarterback situation, I'm just excited for the post game. If it goes as expected, I have to know what they say about Andy Dalton being Q1, because I can't take it anymore.
No, I'm really hoping that this is all just a fever dream, and by the end of preseason and right before week 1, they're like, all right, we get it. Andy Dalton is not our QB1. Justin Fields will be starting, and everything will be right in the world, because I think that's the only thing that makes sense. But who knows? This is the Chicago Bears, and last season, the last couple seasons, they made a lot of questionable decisions with the quarterback situation. So I'm not setting any expectations. I know what I would do if I were them, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
Another game that I'm super excited for, Bengals versus Washington, just because this was the game last season that Joe Burrow tore his ACL. Like, this is where they were playing Washington. Everything went down. And we saw the moment with him and Chase Young at the end. Like, there was a lot there. And now we're moving to getting him 100% back. It's like a nice storyline to see how far he's come since the last time they played together right before the regular season starts again. So hoping that'll be fun.
Yeah, that'll be fun. I think we'll see. I would like to think that we're going to see a little more from the Bengals this week. That's just my gut feeling, is just more overall from, offensively, and having some of the younger guys really step up a little more in this preseason game. Again, I think maybe this defense is a good test. I don't know that we necessarily want to like throw the books at the Washington defense. I wouldn't want to test it. I think it's a little early for that, but it is a good test, I think, for rookies to go up against some of those guys, because they've, established a really nice defense in Washington. And so I think it is something to be feared by pretty much everyone in the league at this point. Really impressive on their part. So I'm looking for any game Washington plays, I'm looking forward to. I think they're definitely, like, I have the worst attention span. I can't do red zone. I need to watch my game and that's it, just focus on my game. But outside of that, I have like a very short list of teams where it's like, if they're playing and I'm not watching another game, I will go on and watch them, and they're one of them.
Yeah,
it's just so fun to watch. Like, they have a lot going on, and they're not a super team by any means, but they've just got fun guys to watch who want it, right? And I think that lacks from some of these really good teams sometimes, but you can just feel it. So I love them.
Yeah, they're definitely not a super team by any stretch, but at the end of the day, I still feel like they are like those underdogs that will come in and win games that they have no business
Yeah.
winning just because we know what their defense can do. If they can figure out some of these top offenses, there's no stopping them. And they're guys on offense, like you got Ryan Fitzpatrick, you got the other quarterbacks behind him. You can run some funky plays if you need to. You
Hmm.
got some offensive studs. You got Scary Terry. Like there are pieces that could make this work, and it's not the perfect situation by any stretch because I really do think in order to be that Super Bowl team, you really need to have a quarterback that you can trust and completely have a team built around.
Yeah.
And they're not totally there, but I think they're in enough of a comfortable position where this weird situation is going to work for them. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think I was glad they didn't draft a quarterback this year. I think it works for the time being. See where your team is at. And then next year, either make a trade for a long term solution or draft. Like,
Yeah.
I'm excited for Washington, and it sucks because they're in my division and my family split. My dad and his whole side of the family, all Washington fans, have
Hmm.
always been.
Hmm.
So it's definitely there's a part of me that just respects this team and loves them and wants them to do well, unfortunately. But yeah, they're someone I definitely have my eye on this whole season.
Yeah. The last one I had, Falcons, Dolphins. I I think we're gonna see Kyle Pitts.
Which I
So
love.
excited. We did not see him last week. They had a huge flex. They're just like, oh, he didn't need it, which is a
Yeah,
lot to say for a rookie. But okay, like he probably doesn't. I
he
mean, if
probably
we're being
doesn't.
honest. But despite Miami's performance last week and what the score said, I think their defense is still really, really good. And I think
Mhm.
that's something that, we saw last year. We definitely know going into this year. So it'll be a fun matchup. I think it'll give Kyle Pitts a real taste of like an NFL defense, the speed of an NFL game. I mean, he's a physical like phenomenon,
Yeah.
and his athleticism is off the charts, and I think he'll get to put that on display. So I think that'll be really fun. I don't anticipate we'll see him for long. I think it'll be a very short appearance, but I do think that he will be in the game, and I think we'll get to see how they intend to use him because I think he's like freaking 6'6" and just can do a little bit of everything. And so I'm excited to see like what they scheme up for him and how he fits into that offense. And so I'm looking forward to that. I don't know if that's enough for me to turn on the entire game and watch it, but it's definitely something I'm going to be looking at either as it's happening or after. And then obviously Tua, I
Yeah.
was not unimpressed with what I saw. Obviously, like anytime you have a red zone interception, it's not ideal, but at the same time, it's like, look, he looked comfortable. He made some good, accurate throws. I think he is getting settled in, and the more he settles in, the better he's going to get. And I have high hopes for him. So I think we're going to see him get progressively better week in and week out leading up to regular season. So I think that's going to be a fun game. I don't know why. Like Kyle Pitts is fun, obviously, to think about and potentially watch, but I have a feeling that matchup's going to be a fun one. I don't know. I don't usually
No,
say that about Falcons games.
well, we know we're both fans of the Dolphins.
Hmm.
Any game the Dolphins are on, especially because, like you said, I'm someone that believes in Tua still. I'm
Yeah.
not off the Tua train. I think it's honestly disrespectful to just completely knock him
Yeah.
after one season. Like things happen. He was a rookie. He made rookie mistakes. He played like a rookie. Yes, they relied on Ryan Fitzpatrick, but now it's his team to kind of do it the taking going into the second year. He's probably learned so much, and I already see improvements. Like you said, it wasn't like I was sitting there like, wow, Tua looks like an entirely different quarterback. He's still made big mistakes,
Right.
but it seems like he knows where his issues are and he's working on them, which is all you can really ask for from a second year quarterback. I think we forget how young he is.
Yeah.
This whole draft class, I think, was so stacked that we forget like how new Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow, Tua, we forget how young they actually are. Like they're only going into their second year. So it's crazy, but So yeah, I'm definitely gonna watch the Dolphins just because I want to see what happens with him. And any chance I can get to see Kyle Pitts on a football field, I will sit down and glue my butt to the sofa and wait for that to happen because I just adore him.
Yeah, and I think you're so right about that. We just forget, like Tua, this is the first season he's going into as the starting quarterback, no questions asked, of the Miami Dolphins, right? And I think that's super important because what you plan up, and I know they had intentions to use him, so it's not like they were totally unprepared for him to come in, but you have to think that the wavering between Ryan Fitzpatrick and Tua and going back and forth and then like putting one of them in, taking one of them out, like it's the
That
old
takes a toll.
It takes a toll. You can never like it just gives the vibe that you're not 100% sold on your quarterback one way or the other, right? So how can you expect them to be 100% sold on their role in the team? I get that they probably have a different mindset. They are more locked in, but at the same time, I think it'll do him good to be that number one guy going into the season, knowing he's the starter, knowing that this is his team, and for them to have had an entire offseason, camp, preseason to really flesh out the issues. And every quarterback's going to make issues, and I don't think that there's like really any great quarterbacks, I'll say, besides like Tom Brady. I don't think there's any great quarterbacks that don't make mistakes, because I think a lot of the great quarterbacks come with those mistakes that are signature mistakes on their part. So
Hey, well, remember when Tom Brady forgot it was 4th down?
that's true.
I have to find something.
I mean, look, come on. Probably more mistakes if he's not out there paying the refs. I don't know. Like, well, we won't even get into that. But yeah, I feel like it is a huge boost of confidence to go into the season with the support of your staff, your coaches, your teammates. And I feel like that about the Chargers too. And I think the Chargers are just on that trajectory of up, right? Because Justin Herbert, like that was such a weird fluke situation. And so now, like, yeah, you had a whole season to like figure it out, but you did not have a team built around Justin Herbert. And now you've got it figured out, or you should, going into the season. And I think he's fully capable of taking on that role. And so we'll see how they adjust to that. But both of those teams are just kind of like poised to have quarterbacks that are a lot more confident this year and a lot more ready for what the NFL is bringing their way. And so I'm excited to watch them. And both of them, I hope, do well. There's like no one I hope doesn't do well. So I feel really redundant being like, I hope he does well. But it's like, there's not a lot of players out there that I'm rooting against. So yeah. Leonard Fournette's the only one.
So. It's more like teams overall that like I don't want them to necessarily succeed, but it takes a lot for me to be like, I want this player to have the worst season of his career.
I'm just such a players person.
Yeah. I love it. Is there any last minute things you have looking forward to this upcoming weekend?
No, I am looking forward to watching the games. I'm not going to be able to I will be out of town. So, exciting things happening, but I'm going to be paying attention. I'm not going to be like super locked in. The Jags are playing the Saints, so I don't know, maybe we'll get a win. But like, it just
was something last season we never would have spoke.
No. But we're seeing the dysfunction. The Saints, I felt like could have gone either way. I was kind of like, yeah, this seems like it's in shambles, but like I could see a situation where they just come out and like blow people's minds, and like it just isn't happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I'll be paying attention. It's preseason. 2020, I think we needed preseason, so I'm thankful for it, and I'm thankful that it's 3 weeks. But I'm like bored already of it.
Yeah. Just because it scratches the itch.
Yeah.
But it doesn't like fulfill the actual need. It's like, I want football that's going to matter. I want every game. I want every snap to count. I want to see everybody out there. But no, last weekend was my best friend's birthday, who knows nothing about football. Nothing. Could care less.
Mhm.
And we were out for him. So I was like, I kept checking my phone. Like we kept going to bars so I could watch everything, but I didn't get to actually sit down and appreciate it the way I would want to. And I was
Yeah.
like, that's how you know how much I love you, because I'm doing this for you. So
Yeah.
I cannot wait to put on my biggest sweatshirt, my biggest sweatpants, sit on my couch and watch football all weekend.
Yes, I have planned my itinerary for my trip around like getting everything I need to get done in the morning. So I do not like I can sit
Yes.
down in a
Yep.
hotel or like find a sports bar and watch it. Um,
We need to
but
find you a Miller's Ale House.
oh my gosh. Dude. Someone posted an Instagram story and was like, "What do you like if you live in Florida, what do you call this?" And they posted a Miller's Ale House photo and it was like Miller's or Ale House and I was like, "It's Ale House obviously in Florida." And so it's just so crazy, but yeah,
It's so weird how you call it the back half and we just call it Miller's.
right. Well, cuz I think so when I was a kid, like no one cares about this, but when I was a kid, we had ale houses and I don't think they were owned by Miller's or they were and they didn't brand them as such. So they had it like they would like it would be your neighborhood. So like in Jacksonville, we have like Mandarin. So it'd be like Mandarin Ale House. And then it would have like, and they would be named, and they still do that. Like in Florida, you still have like Miller's, but it'll say like Orlando Ale House or whatever. But we never called it Miller's. And then all of a sudden it was like Miller's branding. And I'm like, I don't care as long as the singers are the same. So
Yeah.
like, it's irrelevant. But I have not checked. I'm moving to Charlotte. I think I can say that. But I have not checked if there's Miller's Ale House in Charlotte. So that'll be a real unfortunate situation.
We'll Google it. That's a
We'll
quick
Google
Google
it.
search. Oh, all right. Well, hopefully Kaylee finds a Miller's and Ale House
Mhm.
in Charlotte. I'll be on my couch all weekend. Looking forward to seeing you guys next week. Enjoy this weekend. Bye.
Bye.